Are you ready to reapply the hallmarks of Western fantasy to examine our current socio-political environment? Have you learned to love fiction that presents you with a range of complexity and simplicity in its characters? Do you think that baby dragons are just the cutest widow things ever? Well then there's a Netflix original you're going to want to catch. So because I've got to work my PSA muscles sometime before tackling Ward, and because I've got to vent my excitement about a new piece of fiction, let me tell you, spoiler-free, about The Dragon Prince. If you've already watched it, great! Next week's video is all for you. In the meantime, you can send this to any of your stubborn friends and family members who haven't given it a shot yet. Hi, stubborn family members! The Dragon Prince is a fresh, nuanced take on some of the keystones of classic Western fantasy. Its magic system will sound familiar, 6 primal sources of magic are similar to the 4 elements if you squint a bit, but manages to be unique nonetheless, and utterly suited to its narrative. The characters are effectively presented and, dare I say it, 3-dimensional, in any sense of the word. It's no secret that this show bears a few similarities with Avatar: The Last Airbender. And while I'm not saying TLA is the greatest story ever told, yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's not flawless, but it's a stone's throw, easily the closest I've ever seen. So when the Dragon Prince started wearing some of the same colors, even with one of Avatar's head writers in the cockpit, I was skeptical, especially considering how the last one turned out. But while I don't expect the day that I consider any story The Last Airbender's equal, the Dragon Prince inches closer and closer with each episode, hitting many of the beats that shot its predecessor to greatness while remaining unique. It doesn't just recycle narrative. Well, any more than every story does. Like its spiritual forefather, the Dragon Prince has a simple but strong core magic system, protagonists with eminently relatable struggles, and humor that doesn't detract from the dire. Both shows put their characters up against moral, spiritual, and interpersonal challenges that aren't reduced and simplified just because it's a quote-unquote kids show. The characters have belief systems, morals, and values that aren't backpedaled for the sake of an easy answer. They have to deal with history, grief, and what it means to rule. Unlike its spiritual predecessor, the Dragon Prince is a bit more Western with its aesthetic and magic. You'll see some of the same elements. Get it? Cause they're elements. But supplemented with a dose of elves, mages, and phoenix. Phoenixes? Phoenix-I? It also airs on Netflix, a historically less restrictive network than Nickelodeon, and shaking off those shackles allows the writers to explore weightier topics, judge for themselves what kids can handle in their media instead of having to yield to executive decisions based on reputation, lawsuit possibilities, and best practices. The Dragon Prince deals with moral and political nuance in this series, not simply heavy-handed politics. Its characters are diverse in gender, race, and language without ever sacrificing the identity and personality that makes them compelling. It seeks representation for the right reasons, I think, to portray a myriad world and authentically invite a diverse audience. General Amaya, for instance, is deaf, but that's not even the most distinctive thing about her character, in my opinion. She's equal parts loving aunt and ruthless commander, which is a contrast that's played for humor, conflict, and development. But her deafness is still part of her identity too. It's not a one-off quirk that doesn't matter. She signs authentically, she has an interpreter, she has conversations with people who sign that aren't interpreted to the audience because that part is for people who know sign language. It feels like it's for the genuine aim of diversity, not a showrunner's checklist. It feels similar in terms of tropes. They don't try to put together a specific 5-man band or anything, but let the characters develop into a familiar dynamic naturally. It shows that the characters can be simple and easy to grasp without being reductive. These characters are archetypes, but they aren't limited by that. They subvert expectations in small ways while still playing into a good number, like people do. No player in this game is purely wise or purely ridiculous, purely evil or purely good. But that doesn't make it muddy and distracting to a more casual watcher. If you want to examine the moral philosophy and political metaphors that the show encourages you to think about, you've got a ton of material. If you're an experienced story seer, I think you'll love watching what the Dragon Prince does with its characters and relationships. But at the same time, a less comprehensive watcher will have a ton of fun, relate to the characters, and I think they'll have a great time being in the story. It's not a perfect show. I've heard animation complaints for the first season, and if that's something that gets on your nerves, then I don't know what to tell you except that it gets better in Book 2. So long as the models and rendering aren't distractingly horrible, I'm normally able to look past the animation to see what they're doing with the characters, color, and designs. I am the guy who watched all 13 seasons of Red vs. Blue. All 13. Every single season. In all seriousness, these character designs are solid. They're almost Ruby-like in quality, and I have a whole video planned on how good those are. Not only does everyone pass the silhouette test, each character's design effectively communicates relationships and role within the story. Viren's design is purple, gray, and has pale yellow highlights. He sort of lands in the middle of his 2 kids, creating 3 working contrasts of color when any 2 of them are in a scene together. Callum, being the main character, has a blue jacket that distinguishes him from the rest of the cast, but his red shirt and scarf link him back to his half-brother Ezrin, who stands out from Callum and Rayla because his design favors warmth rather than cool blues and aquamarines. Bada bing, bada heck yeah. This is a show that engages me at every turn, and I'm so excited to talk about it more, so give it a chance. You won't regret it. I'm Jay, and I'll see you next week when you've binge-watched the whole thing.